talking about Bronny.
JJ Redick might be his coach, but more recently, he went nuclear on Bronny James mid-game.
I think turned into a really disruptive defender, and that manifested itself. On the offensive end, he's still kind of figuring out who he is.
All of his comments were caught live for the world to hear. When LeBron found out, his reaction in that Lakers building was something nobody on that bench was prepared for. JJ Redick's fiery outburst and LeBron's verdict. November 16, 2025, Milwaukee, Fiserv Forum. The Los Angeles Lakers were on the road handling the Bucks, clean, efficient, dominant, on their way to a 119-95 victory that pushed their record to 10-4 on the season. The kind of night a playoff contender is supposed to have. Everything was going to script, and then JJ Redick opened his mouth from that sideline, and the entire NBA world woke up to their phones buzzing before the final buzzer even sounded. This was Bronny James's first NBA start of the 2025-26 season, only his second career start ever. JJ Redick handed him the nod, and that alone made it a newsworthy night before a single tip-off. But what Bronny did on that floor, or more accurately, what he chose not to do, is what turned a routine blowout win into a viral moment that the basketball world is still unpacking months later. Luka Doncic, who at this point in the season was leading the NBA in scoring and functioning as arguably the most lethal playmaker in professional basketball, was creating open looks for Bronny throughout the first quarter. Kickouts from double teams, corner threes with space, semi-open wing opportunities that any NBA rotation guard pulls the trigger on without thinking twice. Bronny passed up those open looks. He hesitated, deferred, and handed the ball back into the possession instead of shooting. Luka was visibly frustrated, throwing his arms up in one sequence, and JJ Redick, watching from the sideline, had seen enough. He had been patient enough, and then he was not patient anymore. The audio was caught clearly on broadcast microphones and spread to every platform before that game was finished. Bronny, you gotta shoot the f***ing ball. Not a private word during a timeout. Not a hand gesture nobody notices. Not a quiet conversation in the locker room before the second half. Full volume, right on the sideline. In a nationally broadcasted road game, in front of cameras, in front of 17,000 fans at Fiserv Forum, and in front of every microphone that was pointed at the Lakers bench that evening. Redick pulled Bronny after roughly 4 minutes of first half action and did not return him to the floor until garbage time in the blowout. Bronny finished with 10 total minutes, 0 points on 0-2 from the field, 1 rebound, 1 assist, and 1 steal. The box score was not the story. The hesitation was the story. You do not come out of a starting role because you missed a shot. You come out because your head coach watched you pass up 2 wide open opportunities created by the best passer on your team and made the executive decision that you were not doing the thing he specifically needed you to do.
He can do some things defensively at his size that are really unique.
That is Redick from preseason, telling you exactly what he believes this kid can become. The outburst was not a coach who had given up on his player. It was a coach refusing to let a player give up on himself.
Can, I think, turn into a really disruptive defender.
Those are the same words, the same assessment. The coaching yell and the preseason compliment come from exactly the same place. A coach who is invested in what Bronny James can develop into, and who is not going to stand quietly on the sideline while that potential walks away from wide open three-pointers. Now, here's the thing about JJ Redick that is critical context for everything that follows. He did not say anything to Bronny that he had not already said to his own franchise player. Reports confirmed that Redick directed similar sideline outbursts at LeBron James himself during games, yelling at LeBron for shot clock violations and defensive lapses with identical intensity and language. This is not a coach selectively applying pressure to the youngest and most vulnerable player on the roster. This is a coach who holds every single player to the same standard, from the 41-year-old all-time scoring leader down to the second-year guard still figuring out his identity. You do not get a pass because your last name is James. That is the standard. Everybody gets the standard. Fan reactions across Reddit, X, Instagram, and Facebook were overwhelmingly supportive of Redick's intensity. He is spot on. He has to shoot to build confidence dominated the comment sections. Media coverage from Yahoo Sports, Sporting News, and Marca framed it as a necessary coaching moment, justified by the circumstances, NSFW in language, but entirely reasonable in purpose. No major backlash against Redick emerged. This was accountability, not cruelty. Bronny addressed it publicly around November 22nd to 25, 2025, and he handled it the right way. Credit where it is fully due. I'm trying to focus now on bettering myself off the ball. Me and JJ have talked about all the ball handlers on the parent team, so I have to learn how to be effective off the ball. Have a 0.5 mentality, shoot the ball when I have open shots and try to get better at that. No meltdown, no social media response, just process. And in one of his next G League appearances shortly after, Bronny posted 15 points on 5-10 shooting with 8 assists, 4 rebounds, and 3 steals, directly applying what he had been told to do. That is either a young player with real character or a young player who understands perfectly well that the entire basketball world is watching him at all times. Either way, he responded correctly. Around 10 to 11 days after the viral sideline moment, LeBron James addressed J.J. Redick's overall coaching approach on the Mind the Game podcast with Steve Nash. And what came out of LeBron's mouth was not the reaction of a father who stormed into the coaching staff's office demanding answers. It was the endorsement of a man who genuinely understood and respected every word that had been shouted on that Milwaukee sideline. LeBron drew a direct comparison between Redick and one of the most revered coaches in basketball history. I had an opportunity to play for Coach K a couple times, and Coach K, there's no sugarcoating. He's going to tell you exactly how he feels if you're not doing it right, but it's going to be in a very stern but loving way. He defended the entire principle behind Redick's directness across the roster. He's right to the point, no sugarcoating it. This is how we want to play, and if I'm seeing possessions or things not up to our standard, I'm going to show you my reaction. I can respect that. And the single most important line LeBron delivered in this entire conversation, it's not how he says it, it's about how you accept it. There it is, the father of the player who got yelled at publicly on national television in front of 17,000 fans and a viral camera clip, endorsing the approach, the culture, and the coach without a single caveat. No drama, no backroom conversation, no pulling rank. LeBron has consistently described Redick as someone who bleeds the game and breathes the game every single day. And their bond, built through years of shared basketball discourse on the Mind the Game podcast long before Redick picked up a clipboard, gave LeBron a deeper understanding of Redick's character than most player-coach relationships could generate in a full season. LeBron stepped back. He let the coaching work. He let Bronny walk through his own fire. But the reason the entire world was watching so closely when Redick raised his voice and Bronny looked back toward the bench goes directly back to how Bronny James arrived on that Lakers roster in the first place. And that story has a lot more people in it and a lot more fury behind it than one viral sideline clip. The draft controversy that won't die down. The 2024 NBA Draft happened on June 26, 2024. With the 55th overall pick, the Los Angeles Lakers selected Bronny James. The reaction was not what you typically hear for a late second-round selection made on pure basketball merit, because that is not exactly the framing that surrounded this pick from the moment the name was called. Before the draft, Bronny had completed one season at USC, averaging 4.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, and 2.1 assists per game on 36.6% shooting. He had dealt with a congenital heart defect that required surgery and significantly limited his development as a player during that college year. Most draft analysts projected him as a late second-round pick at best, with several projections dropping him entirely off the board. The basketball case for Bronny James at the second-round level was thin. The business case for the Los Angeles Lakers making that pick was not thin at all. LeBron James had been publicly vocal for years about his desire to play alongside one of his sons in the NBA. He had said, on record, that Bronny was already better than some players currently in the league before Bronny had even been drafted. He had made it known that any team drafting Bronny would receive his consideration as a player when looking at his future. His agent, Rich Paul, the founder of Clutch Sports, reportedly reached out to teams to signal Bronny's preference for the Lakers or the Phoenix Suns. This was not a quiet late-round pick. This was a leveraged situation with a basketball draft pick wearing the costume. The Lakers signed Bronny to a guaranteed 4-year contract worth $7.9 million, an arrangement that is genuinely unusual for a 55th overall selection, where contracts are typically non-guaranteed minimums that organizations can walk away from at any moment. Guaranteed money for a second-round pick with no NBA track record is not a basketball decision. Lakers GM Rob Pelinka called the pick magical for the 55th pick. I will allow you to sit with that word choice for a moment. Now, an ESPN report from Ramona Shelburne in January 2026 claimed that LeBron never directly asked the Lakers to draft Bronny, that the organization made the decision independently, believing in his potential and wanting to keep LeBron satisfied. Fine, but let us be plainly honest. When the most valuable player on your roster publicly signals for years that playing alongside his son matters deeply to him, you do not need a formal written request. The message arrives without postage. The pick happened. The guaranteed contract happened. Bronny and LeBron became the first father and son in NBA history to play on the same team. The history was made. The controversy persists into March 2026 because Bronny's NBA role remains minimal. He averages around 2.1 21 points in approximately 7 minutes per game across his second season, with frequent DNPs and G League assignments peppering his schedule. Every night, Bronny sits in street clothes on that bench is another piece of artillery for the argument that he would not be on any NBA roster without his father's name on the back of his jersey. The critics do not need to construct new arguments. The roster spot makes the argument for them on a nightly basis. Now, enter Stephen A. Smith. If there is one name permanently attached to the most combustible chapter of this entire story, it belongs to the loudest voice on ESPN's First Take. Smith had been consistently and publicly vocal throughout 2024 and into early 2025, arguing on First Take that Bronny was in the NBA because of his father's influence, rather than his own merit, and that the league was doing Bronny a disservice by rushing him onto a roster before he was ready.
Bronny James doesn't belong in the NBA. Not yet.
Smith was clear, and this is important, that he believed in Bronny's long-term potential. He said so directly. But the present tense case for belonging on an NBA roster, he was not buying it. And in January 2025, he delivered his most pointed statement yet on national television. "I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad." LeBron heard it. And on March 6, 2025, during the Lakers' 113-109 overtime win over the New York Knicks at Crypto.com Arena, LeBron James did something nobody in that building had on their bingo card.
That was a father.
The father, LeBron James, scolding ESPN's Stephen A. Smith during Thursday's Lakers game.
During a third-quarter timeout, LeBron walked directly from the Lakers bench to where Smith was seated courtside, beside guests including Endeavor, CEO Ari Emanuel, and Larry David, because of course that was the audience, and delivered his message in person, on live television, in front of cameras that he apparently clocked immediately. Reports interpreted LeBron saying variations of, "Keep my son out of this, bro," or "You gotta stop talking about my son." Smith confirmed the substance of the confrontation on First Take the very next morning. "That was LeBron James coming up to me, unexpectedly I might add, to confront me about making sure that I mind what I say about his son." What followed was weeks of escalating media warfare across every platform available. LeBron appeared on the Pat McAfee show on March 26, 2025, criticized Smith for making it personal, and compared Smith's recurring commentary to a Taylor Swift tour run, circling the same material repeatedly with no end in sight. Smith's response on First Take was not diplomatic.
He's like on a Taylor Swift tour run right now.
Oh, yeah.
That is LeBron's quote being played back on the show, and Stephen A. had responses that were significantly less gentle. He called LeBron's courtside approach weak, said he was lying when he claimed Smith attacked his son personally, and insisted the target of his commentary was always LeBron's role as a father in circumventing the league's meritocracy, not Bronny's character. By February 2026, Smith told an interviewer plainly, "We don't like each other. The world needs to know that." LeBron's protective instincts extended beyond the Smith confrontation. He also publicly targeted Doug Gottlieb after Gottlieb suggested Bronny would not start on his Wisconsin Green Bay College roster. Gottlieb later said his comments didn't age well, but refused to fully apologize and pushed back at LeBron directly in response. The broader pattern across both feuds was consistent. Any media figure who LeBron felt crossed from basketball analysis into personal commentary about Bronny's worthiness could expect to be heard from, publicly, pointed, and without apology. The irony underneath all of it is that the loudest critics are not wrong about the basketball reality, and LeBron is not wrong that protecting your son from what feels like personal attacks is a father's right. These two things can both be true simultaneously. They are, and they are going to keep generating headlines as long as Bronny James is on an NBA roster averaging 7 minutes per game while his father's name is still on the marquee. Now, what Bronny is actually doing with those minutes and what he's been building quietly in the G League while the feuds dominate the coverage is a story that deserves its own full chapter. Bronny's G League grind and his honest response. Strip away everything: the headlines, the feuds, the viral outbursts, the courtside confrontations, the Twitter wars, and what you are left with is a 21-year-old basketball player trying to build something real inside the hardest professional league on the planet. Bronny James is in his second NBA season. He was drafted 55th overall. He has a guaranteed contract. He wears a Los Angeles Lakers uniform, and by nearly every statistical measure available at the NBA level, he is not yet a rotation player. Let us be straight about that because the numbers demand it. Through 32 appearances in the 2025-26 season, Bronny is averaging 2.1 points, 0.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and 0.3 steals in 7 minutes per game. His field goal percentage has climbed from 31.3% last season to 39.7% this year, with a 41.4% mark from three-point range. Those are genuine improvements, real, measurable, documented progress that deserves acknowledgement without qualification. But 7 minutes per game is a coaching staff saying they believe in your future while managing your present with extreme care. The Lakers have assigned Bronny to their G League affiliate, the South Bay Lakers, multiple times throughout the 2025-26 season. In February, multiple windows in March, and in other stretches throughout the year. The most recent assignment came around March 13th, following a brief recall to the parent club. This is not a punishment. JJ Redick and the coaching staff have been clear since draft day that shuttling between the NBA and G League was always the plan for a young player who needs reps in an environment where he is a featured performer rather than an emergency option sitting at the end of a bench. And in the G League, the difference in Bronny James is genuinely startling. Across roughly 21 G League appearances this season, Bronny is averaging 15.3 points, 2.8 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and 1.3 steals per game in approximately 28 minutes. His shooting splits at that level have approached elite efficiency, 54.6% from the field, 42.1% from three, and 90.9% from the free throw line. To put those three numbers in proper context, that shooting profile, sustained at volume, would place him in conversation for what the basketball world calls the 50-40-90 club, a benchmark that only a handful of the most efficient shooters in NBA history have ever reached. Bronny is not operating at that level at the NBA level yet, but in the G League, he is playing with that kind of efficiency across a meaningful sample of games. The South Bay Lakers have been dominant with him in the lineup throughout this stretch, building extended win streaks that have secured their playoff positioning. He is not a supporting role piece in that environment. He is a focal point getting real, consequential minutes in an offense that runs through him. Now, here is where Charles Barkley walked into this conversation with his characteristically unfiltered willingness to say what polite NBA media circles prefer to tiptoe around. Barkley appeared on the Better Angle podcast and had plenty to say about how the entire situation has been handled. That is Chuck Barkley saying it directly, without a filter, without a disclaimer, and without the kind of careful hedging that most media figures wrap around anything involving LeBron James and his family. And Barkley did not stop there. What drew his most specific criticism was a detail circulating in basketball discussions for weeks, that Bronny was participating in South Bay home games, but not traveling with the team on road trips, raising questions about whether he was getting the full developmental experience that the assignment was supposed to provide. Barkley's full argument extended beyond Bronny specifically. He pointed out that every other player on the South Bay roster is fighting for their professional career, trying to build game film, attract attention from overseas organizations, maybe catch the eye of an NBA front office looking for depth. When Bronny absorbs home game minutes and disappears for road assignments, those players lose opportunities that could genuinely change the trajectory of their lives. Barkley concluded bluntly, "I don't think they're doing Bronny any favors. They just handled this thing really bad. It's a bad look for the Lakers. I really liked everything LeBron has done, but it's a bad look for him too, in my opinion." DeMarcus Cousins added to the conversation on the Run It Back podcast, saying that drafting Bronny told him the Lakers were no longer serious about competing at the highest level.
I don't really think the Lakers are serious anymore.
To be fair to Cousins, he made that statement before the Luka Doncic trade landed in January 2025 and completely redrew the Lakers' championship calculus. With Luka wearing purple and gold and leading the NBA in scoring, the not serious argument requires some significant revision, but the specific critique about Bronny's role has not quieted down, even with that transformation as backdrop. And then, on March 19, 2026, during the Lakers' blowout win over the Houston Rockets, Bronny was a DNP for the fourth consecutive game. Rockets head coach Ime Udoka, with the game well in hand in the final 30 seconds, was caught on hot mics appearing to badger Redick from across the court, reportedly urging him to put Bronny into the game. The clip went massively viral. Redick did not put Bronny in. Whether that was a point being made, a rotation decision, or simply a coach who does not take basketball suggestions from the opposing bench in garbage time, no official comment from either side had emerged by the time reports circulated. But here is what cuts through all of the external commentary, all of the criticism from Barkley, all of the discourse about DMPs and home game limitations and legacy picks. What Bronny James himself said in a Clutch Points exclusive interview published around March 19 to 21, 2026 is the most important piece of this entire story, because it tells you who this young man actually is when the cameras stop focusing on his father. He named JJ Redick and South Bay head coach Zach Guthrie directly. He credited them both for the message that has driven his G League numbers upward this season. "They always tell me that they want me to be as aggressive as possible and look to score. It's just been my mindset at all times now. If they give it to me, I'll go get a bucket. If not, then just back it out in space and make a play. And on the specific approach that was hammered into him after every G League assignment, every film session, and yes, every public sideline outburst that the internet dissected frame by frame, I think it's just staying aggressive, just looking for my shot first, and if the defender steps in front of me, make the pass then. That is not the language of a player who has been broken by scrutiny. That is not a young man drowning underneath the weight of his father's legacy and everything the NBA world has projected onto him since birth. That is a player who absorbed a very public coaching moment, processed it constructively, went down to the G League, and came back with a clearer understanding of who he is supposed to be. His shooting efficiency has jumped from 31.3% as a rookie to nearly 40% at the NBA level and above 54% in the G League this season. One direction. Every metric points the same way. Bronny's contract decisions approach at the end of the 2025-26 season. The roster spot, the G League assignments, the DNPs, the whole constructed development arc, all of it will be evaluated. And for the first time since he was drafted into the most scrutinized second-round pick in recent NBA history, the player himself appears to have clarity about what his job is and what he needs to do to earn a longer stay. Whether the league will evaluate that case purely on its basketball merits, separate from his last name, his father's shadow, and every viral camera angle that has followed the James family roster spot since day one, remains genuinely open. But Bronny James is still going to the gym every day and working on giving the league an answer it cannot argue with. Thanks for watching, folks. Here is where we draw the curtain. To enjoy more of such content, be sure to click on the card showing on the screen.